Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Am I audible? People hear me?
Yes, you are.
Yes. Good afternoon, Mr. Neotia.
Yes, I can
Good
hear
afternoon.
you.
Okay. Good afternoon, Vijay. Good afternoon, Mr. Nirmal Kumar and colleagues. So we will start the program today. Fourth Marketing Leadership Summit 20. Request everybody to be on mute. Someone's microphone is open. If it can mute, thank you. Thank you. Marketing Leadership Summit, the fourth edition, marketing in the next normal kind of for this one. So this is indeed a great pleasure to see you all joining us at the fourth Marketing Leadership Summit of the CII-Suresh Neotia Center of Excellence for Leadership. I'm very happy to share that this is the first virtual edition of this summit that features an enviable lineup of 9 global thought leaders and 27 renowned experts, industry and academicians, and also experts in various ways. Since its first edition in 2017, it has featured 70 eminent speakers and practitioners while witnessing the participation of over 800 participants from across businesses and geographies. It is our great pleasure and privilege to have with us here today most eminent minds representing academia and industry. And may our own chairman, Mr. Harshvardhan Neotia, who's the chairman of the CII-Suresh Neotia Center of Excellence for Leadership and chairman of the Ambuja Neotia Group. Neotia. Also very welcome, especially Professor Nirmalya Kumar, who's the Lee Kong Chia Professor of Marketing, Singapore Management University, and Miss Rama Bijapurkar. Nobody needs to introduce her. She's a renowned management consultant and best-selling author of several books on the subject. Won't take much time. May I now ask Mr. Harshvardhan Neotia, Chairman of the CII Suresh Neotia Center of Excellence for Leadership, to please deliver the address. Mr. Neotia, thank you. Mr. Neotia, I think you are muted.
Can you hear me now?
Very well, very well.
I thank you, Indrani. I wish to extend my own warm personal welcome to all of you to this first Marketing Leadership Summit, which is being held virtually by the CII Suresh Neotia Center for Excellence. A very, very warm welcome to you, Professor Nirmalya Kumar. Thank you very much for joining us and lovely to see you, even though we are seeing each other virtually. Thank you, Ms. Rama Bijapurkar. Thank you very much. I've read your books, great admirer of your wonderful work, and thank you very much for joining us. Members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, a warm welcome to all of you. Well,
There's a bit of internet issue, it seems, Yashudra.
Yes, ma'am. We are trying to resolve it from with his office.
Hmm.
Yes, Mr. Neotia, I think there was
Sorry.
some bandwidth issue. I
Yeah, yeah.
think we can see you back.
Thank you. So, this marketing leadership summit is more important now than ever before. Obviously, in view of so many challenges that the world is now facing, so much accentuated due to COVID 19 that has come like a storm in our midst and has disrupted so many things. Well, given these unprecedented times, there is nothing better that we could have than such a stellar galaxy of global leaders and speakers to give us their thoughts and help us in navigating through these rather turbulent times. Before I say a word or two about our distinguished speakers for the inaugural session, may I just briefly introduce to you the CII-Suresh Neotia Center for Excellence. Our family was privileged to partner with CII way back in, I think, 2009 to set up the CII Center for Excellence in Leadership in Calcutta. And since then, the center has been doing very innovative work, particularly in the field of leadership development, and it has now wide-ranging partnerships with various organizations and academia. They hold a lot of workshops, and I'm not going to elaborate very much except to say that I'm truly happy and proud that we could contribute in some measure to set this up and to now chair this institute. So we obviously wish we could have done a lot more, but thankfully, technology has helped us to still keep in touch with our various stakeholders, friends, and associates. Uh, though, of course, it is nothing like having you all over physically at the lovely premises of the CII-Suresh Neotia Center. A critical element of leadership is the ability to envision the future and devise strategies to confront sudden disruptions while catalyzing business growth. Uh, we are all aware how this pandemic has caused us a lot of disruptions. And as they say, we are all in the same storm, but we are not in the same boat. Some of the businesses have actually been badly devastated. Some of them in the informal sector has actually had to close shop, and there are others who have benefited from this problem. And so different companies have had to face different situations in this crisis. And it requires a lot of leadership, a lot of innovation to be able to see how those which are most adversely impacted navigate through this choppy waters till the storm uh, ceases. We are truly privileged today to have Professor Nirmala Kumar. He is one of the leading thinkers in the world, and his name was included thrice in the Thinkers 50, which is the globally acclaimed listing of top 50 management thinkers in the world, before being inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2017 for his lifetime contribution to management thought leadership. In 2011, he had also received the Global Village Award for the person who contributed the most to business community's understanding of globalization and the new frontiers established by emerging markets. Over the years, he has also been featured amongst the 50 best B School professors and 50 most influential business school professors. He's been a keen collector of Indian artist Jamini Roy. Professor Kumar is said to have the largest collection of Roy paintings outside of India. Given his truly remarkable background as a marketing expert of global renown and his personal interest in the arts, Professor Kumar, in many ways, personifies the quintessential thought leader. Very warm welcome to you, Professor Kumar. We're also privileged to have in our midst Ms. Rama Vijapurkar. Ramaji is widely acknowledged as a thought leader in marketing strategy and consumer behavior and has been a keen commentator on social and cultural exchange in India. She has an independent management consulting practice and has also been recognized as one of India's most experienced and prominent independent directors, having served on boards of many prominent Indian companies such as Infosys, Axis Bank, Bharat Petroleum, CRISIL, Nestle India, ICICI Bank, and many others. She has also served on the governing council of entities like Banking Codes and Standards Boards of India, Insurance Information Bureau IIM Ahmedabad, and the Competition Commission of India, and has been a fellow of MasterCard Center for Inclusive Growth and Center for Emerging Market Economies. Ms. Bijapurkar is also a best-selling author of many books. Fortunately, I've read one or two of them, and it's truly wonderful, ma'am, to have you with us to share your thoughts. Uh, with these words, I warmly welcome all of you once again, and would now like to request Ms. Rama Bijapurkar to kick off the inaugural session of the Marketing Leadership Summit 2020. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Those are very kind words. And it is a privilege to be here. It is a special privilege to share the forum with Professor Nirmala Kumar, who I deeply admire, whose work I have seen a lot of. And namaste, everybody. A warm welcome. I hope you are rapidly finding your comfortable next normal for now, because whoever says they know how India's future will unfold and what consumer India's next normal will be is lying or delusional or a stock market mover and shaker, because that seems to go up and up and up. I was just wondering, is it possible for me to share my screen, or is that not possible? Either way, it's cool. I can't seem to get the icon here. So today I'm just going to share with you what I see from what data my think tank puts out. It's called People Research on India's Consumer Economy and Citizen Environment. And what we try and do is to move people away from getting spooked by macro data to start looking at households and household views. So I'm going to share with you what data we have, my hypotheses, and it can at best be sharing, and we'll all have to come to our own conclusions as we see how our futures unfold. I especially look at demand structure data in confusing times, because given the diversity of India, I think a lot of observations on behavior that we see in corporate boardrooms and companies are through very narrow windows that we actually see. Whereas India, as you know, has the richest man that happened during the lockdown, and it also has the largest number of migrants that we have. Sorry, question, is it possible to share my screen?
Indrani, Ramaji wants to share her screen.
We did a trial run once.
Yes, please.
But I'm not able to get the link. I just want to show you some nice pictures. Pictures of what I see in life around me, more than anything terribly erudite, so I can live without it as well. I also want to examine some fundamental assumptions that we make. To what extent has, oh great, so what do I do now? I go to my screen. Sorry.
Rama, when you press the share button, you should see several screens. Pick the one with the PowerPoint, and that
Okay,
should
can you see it now? No, okay, I seem to have tanked myself, but anyway, I think we'll. Yeah, I'm trying to get that screen, but I'm unfortunately not. Oh, pick the one with my PowerPoint. Okay,
yes,
got
pick
it.
the one with your PowerPoint. That's the one that will give you.
Got it. But it's not doing anything. So listen, let's just move on, okay? I am unable to exactly share it. Yeah. Okay, can you see it?
Yeah.
Okay.
In
Just
God
full
we
screen.
trust.
Just full screen it.
Full screen it? Okay, fine. So the first one just says, in God we trust, the rest bring data to the table. Because I have been to meeting after meeting after meeting where we have completely spooked ourselves. So I really want to talk about how weak is the sentiment. Is there a new normal? Is it the old normal that is just accelerating on some counts and going backwards 5 years on others? That is basically what I'm seeing around me. And when we talk about structural shifts, I think just a little pause to say, who causes these shifts anyway? So I've talked about seeing structure data, and I think that one of the big things that we I think also when we talk about the next normal, we need to have some kind of a mental model. Is it a long illness, medicine, have medicine, take time, recover, go back to your old ways? Or is it an accident, a little bit like Humpty Dumpty, where you can't put it back together again? And I think the answer is very different for the demand side and the supply side, and we constantly keep confusing the two. If you're an NBFC, between restructuring, moratorium, increased cost of funds, and no ability to pass those cost of funds, particularly in this volatile regulatory environment, I think you end up pretty nearly going close to bankruptcy, especially if the consumer segment you serve has been hard hit. Insolvency is likely. On the customer side, obviously, the answer is a little bit different. I also look at, I also wonder often at India Inc. and the business media, where we say that a bad supply side figure means demand is broken, and we spook ourselves on the basis of that. Whereas a bad supply side could just mean a bad supply side because the supply hasn't got its act together. And we keep sort of waiting for the government to spend in order to boost demand. So we've created a micro variable out of our revenues, a macro variable out of our revenues, and that's called demand. And the government of India then becomes either the marketing director or the creator of the tide based on which we roll in and we roll out. However, I think it's time to think about it differently, because I think the government of India is not a marketing director to keep creating demand. Spending to bail out people, I think, is necessary, relevant, fine. Spending in order to boost corporate bottom lines, I think we have to think about it again in a larger context. And on the other hand, we also say there is a new normal, but how do we meet our old targets? We're seeing a lot of this in our boardrooms as well. And I just want to submit that mature leadership is required to strike a balance between the two, because we are seeing good companies, as Neotia mentioned, actually becoming better. We're seeing them pick up market share. We're seeing the strong get stronger, and we are seeing a lot of the weak die by the wayside. So to just look at how bad are the facts on consumer demand, first of all, every time we put out occupation data, because how India spends is a function of how India earns. And every time we put out occupation data, I think no one wants to look at it because it's a very uncomfortable thing to look at. What this chart basically tells you is that 34% of India, 39% of rural, and about a little less of urban actually are casual laborers. That is the structure of our demand, whether we like it or not. These are daily wage people with no particular allegiance to any profession, largely construction labor, not agricultural labor. And another small proportion are petty traders or hawkers who on a daily basis are actually going out and earning. This is really 38% of everybody. The proportion that we love to serve, which I have in green, which is salaried employees more or less in the formal sector and a very small proportion of people like us, is really only 5% of the total. And let's look in a minute to what proportion of consumption expenditure they contribute. So we are starting off with a really volatile consumer base. We're starting off with and the problem is not consumer spends. The problem is that if you don't have enough investment, if we haven't had it for a while, if you don't start the wheels of the economy moving, your casual labor actually has no jobs or work to do. Similarly, petty traders. There is a certain proportion of agriculturists, 52 million households, 20% of everybody. And whether they do well or badly, we have to see early indications are that they seem to be sort of doing okay. So we have a really lousy occupation structure, which is dependent on whether investment happens or not. Apologies for this. You can read it in detail either from the Mint website or from i360.in. And this is really telling you what proportion of the rich, the middle, and the poor in this country, based on every proportion, based on every occupation, what they actually contribute. So if you take item number 4 of rural consumption in the top half, that's here, consumption, casual labor of all kinds, they actually contribute to 1/3 of your entire consumption expenditure. That is not a surprise if you look at people like us. And by the way, rural India accounts for about half of India's consumption expenditure, 60% of consumption expenditure, depending on which category you look at. So let's take half. If you look at urban consumption, you find that people like us, which are salaried and so on and so forth, are contributing to about 43% of urban consumption. So it's easy to see why we actually love that segment and not the others. Now, are all of them doing just as badly? All of them are not doing just as badly. If you actually put a risk map on this, we tend to believe that about 50% of your consumption will come through, and 50% of your consumption expenditure at an all India basis for households will actually be fairly badly hit. 50%, however, of a larger number, if you look at the fairly tiny top lines of most of our companies, is actually not reason to panic. I think we have to start moving from what is happening to the state of the world and how much is it contracting to what is happening to my revenue, because I know most people listening in here do not serve casual labor. In fact, casual labor is served by China. So China not coming in now is a huge big issue that we really have to look at. About 50% of our consumption, as I said, I think will be at risk, but everybody has to really figure out, given these risk maps, where you actually are in terms of what your consumption hit is really going to be. That said, the top 20% of India, who we love to call our middle class, has 40% of consumption expenditure, half of India's income. So many companies that serve the really top end are actually going to be doing not so badly at all, unless you actually get squeezed by what happens. So I also think that these are governing. Sorry? Yeah? Hello? I also believe that these are fairly Darwinian times where the fittest does survive. So we are seeing some companies exploiting new opportunities. Swiggy Genie is my favorite. We are actually passing on food from households to households. On the other hand, we're seeing a bunch of people who are really actually falling apart. Now, policy-wise, this is devastating. I think we should take some lessons from the stock market, which has done a huge flight to safety in recent times. But marketing-wise, I think we're really seeing customer segmentation. We also find that I think this whole business also, what is discretionary and not discretionary expenditure, another spook point for us. Really, we have to rethink that. If we rename discretionary as necessary expenditure, not necessary expenditure, I think we will not create marketing theories, and we will not be surprised about why some people are buying iPhones and why some people are buying new computers when every child in school now has to go online. Again, talking of Darwinian times, there is an electrician in Bombay who has made a ton of money during lockdown because he was the last man standing. There is also my sabji wala across the road. My sabji wala is really saying, if you send me a message on WhatsApp, I will get you exactly what you need. He's cut his inventory. He's making more money. In addition to which, now there are many, many little places where tempos are coming direct from Nasik and places like that with vegetables. As a result of this, what you're ending up finding is that the whole walk to the mandi, the expenses that go with it, you can't really get good vegetables on Sunday, all that's over. We all have stories of this kind. There is yoga teacher 1 who's charging double for calls on Zoom and personalized teaching. There is yoga teacher 2 who has made zero money, has not been able to step out of the house. and has elderly students are not being able to make the transition. So I think that we are seeing a fair amount of distance between people, even with more or less the same structural similarities. If you're making floor robots, your time has absolutely come. The number of my friends who've asked me how to buy it, where to buy it from, is quite large. So I think we just have to really think again from first principles. Coming to consumer sentiment, which we've been tracking, we've asked people on the phone for the last 10 weeks, 12 weeks to answer between two questions. One that says this is an extremely dangerous virus, something to the effect of you should do everything you can to protect yourself, don't go anywhere, don't see anybody. And the other says that yes, it's dangerous, don't do anything really stupid that will put you at risk. But other than that, it's time all of us got back to normal. In May, when we tracked it, it was 62 saying, bach ke raho. And in July, in June, it was down to 40/60. In July, it's 36/64. Is behavior changing in some way? Of course, we have people who are paranoid. We have people who are pragmatic. We have people who are majboor. I asked a cigarette company how come their sales were back to 80% of normal. And he said, it's only pampered white collar folk like you who are sitting at home. Everybody else is actually out on the street. If you look at, my favorite picture in terms of behavior, is behavior new? What is the new normal? I've said that if 1 is Kutte Ka Dum and 10 is transformational change, I'm putting the Indian consumer at about 2 or 3. This is actually my favorite picture, whereas you can see we have put our footwear where we should be social distancing and everyone sitting on the side and having a fairly good time. So of course there are minor changes, but we're still seeing people spitting. That's not changed. We're seeing masks that are worn this way, if at all there are masks. It's back to the good old Indian way, like we have for security checks and so on and so forth, where the ritual is far more important. We have no problem ordering in because Swiggy tells us that they have checked the temperature of the cook. We don't know where the cook is. We don't know where the cloud kitchen is. We don't know who else carries it along the way, but we're actually quite happy. So I really think that the biggest issue for us is no income. No income is something that's been starting because of an investment cycle for various reasons, and that's another story altogether. But I don't think investment is not happening because people don't have faith in the consumer story. It happened a long time earlier on account of various other things. But I do want to say that it does take two to tango. It takes two to tango because the consumer, as we know, has been going through so many new experiences never before. Most of us have done BJP activities for the first time, Bartan, Jhadu, Pocha. Literally, everybody now knows how a lot of this works. We've had more family bonding than perhaps is good for us or our families. We have new understanding around that. Where millennials are eating at home a lot more. I personally have learned to drive after 25 years. I've started driving again, and I have learned to make chapatis. There are WhatsApp videos of every kind that are telling you what to do. And I think the point really is that if this is jelly that hasn't yet set, then what is really the supply side doing in terms of helping the jelly set and set to your good for you? Someone asked me, jewelry ka kya hoga? Abhi weddings mein kya hoga? And I'm thinking, क्या होगा? लड़की की शादी है, पैसे हैं, Thailand से orchids तो नहीं आ सकते हैं. You can't have more than 50 guests, so forget the 1,000 people. So maybe every one visitor who comes gets a return present of a diamond ring. If you can make that happen, it will still cost less than a regular wedding. I haven't had a travel agent that has given me drool value of where all to go once the thing opens up, and open up it will at some point in time. Though there are people who've told you can rent furniture. Club Mahindra, I have not seen anywhere along the way telling me how to bond better when things get better. So I think I'm just going to leave it to say, one, don't spook based on macros. Use analysis and look at your revenue sources. To assess the damage for yourself, given structure and given where you are. Third, the next normal will be the old normal gone way forward on things like digital. temples went digital ages back. Today, everybody's gone digital. It will be backward in terms of income, and it will be backward in terms of certain amounts of purchasing power that are there. And finally, it takes two to tango. The jelly hasn't yet set. The consumer has unbelievable experiences. So let's make it work and work to our advantage. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I think my 20 minutes is up, and I really missed seeing all of you. I hope this is good for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Ramaji. I am to follow you, of course, which is a tough act. I'm hoping they will allow me also to screen so that I can get my PowerPoint up, which I think should be possible. And full screen.
Got it.
Okay, folks, in the 15-20 minutes that I have before we end this session on time, I'd like to just talk about this research that I've done. An article on this was published in the last month, Harvard Business Review, or August, more precisely now. Months go very fast when you're doing nothing and sitting in lockdown. But I've done some more research on this. And what I would like to just say is we have more than 50 to 100 academic papers on marketing in recessions, all of them with beautiful counterintuitive results that have been unknown in the practitioner world and practitioner press. And finally, I got a chance to bring them out and showcase them. And I've been doing this lecture now, I think, almost like on a daily basis. So let me just start by saying that and I'm going to contrast what I consider managerial instinct and contractions versus what the academic research says we should do. So the managerial instinct on research, on marketing and advertising is, of course, the biggest part of marketing. When I talk about advertising, I mean all kinds of advertising, of course, that most firms with what you call a cutback on advertising during recessions. That's why you see a decline in advertising industry. And even though you may be using more Facebook and Google, their revenues are not increasing. Secondly, you see the companies, they justify this by saying, listen, if my sales are expected to fall, my advertising to sales ratio to keep the same, I need to cut advertising. Also because I need to keep my profitability in the place. Also because in advertising industry is declining, the unit advertising cost declines. So I can buy the same amount of advertising with less money. So why should I increase my budget? So I can cut my budget. And as the competitors are also cutting back, I can have less clutter, so my share of voice will more or less stay the same. And this entire herd behavior where some competitors are cutting these to other competitors, cutting these to you competing, means that the advertising industry goes on a downward cycle. In any case, there's general uncertainty about the economy and whether ads really work, who really knows, so it's an easy cost to cut. And all of this relates to the fact that people see advertising and marketing as a cost rather than an investment. Okay, and also within the budget of marketing that remains, we see during recessions, because people are desperate for sales, they tend to move their advertising budget more to sales activation compared to brand building. Now, in contrast, what does academic research prove? Academic research done over the last 4 or 5 recessions shows that advertising spending during recession is much more valuable than advertising spending during contractions. And the reason it's more effective is because the same budget gets you a higher share of voice as competitors cut back. The same budget gets you more impression as the cost per impression falls. But there is one limiting condition to this. This only works if your brand value proposition or your brand offer is appealing. So, as we say in marketing, nothing kills a bad product kills a bad product faster than lots of advertising. So if you have a good brand and a good product proposition and a good value proposition, then all the data seems to indicate that spending money on marketing during recessions is much more valuable than spending it in expansionary times. And the companies that maintain or increase their budget during recessions tend to do very well. There are several examples of this. In the interest of time, I'm not going to go through all of them. I'm just going to use the most recent example of 2009, recession of 2007 and 8, the financial crisis, when Reckitt Benckiser at that time was being led by my good friend Rakesh Kapoor. They reported an increase of 14% in profits and 8% in sales at a time when most of their competitors like Unilever and P&G were reporting profits down by more than 10%. And what did Reckitt Benckiser do? they persuaded their people to pay more for their more expensive branded products, products that you know well, like Dettol and Vanish and Harpic. They persuaded them to pay more by increasing their advertising during this time of recession by 25%, when most competitors are cutting their marketing budgets and cost per impression had fallen. So that is the anecdotal evidence to support the. So basically, effective advertising in recessions, even if you can't maintain your budget, at least maintain continuity at the share of voice level. There is a diminished role for sales activation. So don't get tempted to move your advertising budget from brand image to more sales activation because you're desperate for sales. Because at a time like this, in general, consumers are less open and less able to increasing, buying. Also, in terms of advertising, what we know in recessions, not about only the budget, but it's also the kind of advertising that you do in recessions. So the data seems to suggest that the kind of advertising that works best in recessions is advertising featuring emotions and humor. Why? Because consumers are in a tough place, they are stressed, they are not happy, and they want a little bit more of an uplifting, funny message. But it has to be rooted in brand performance. So it can't just be a simply an emotional wash. And demonstrating humanity and generosity in your advertising through behavior and in your advertising is very much important, because brands should ask the question in their advertising, in these tough times, how can we help? And that's the advertising that is most effective. And there's several examples of this. I'm going to use one from my home country and home city of London, where Timson, which is a dry cleaner, basically advertised that if you're unemployed and need an outfit clean for an interview, we will clean it for free. And their whole logic over here is that consumers have a long memory as to who stood by them in their tough times. Similarly, Singapore Airlines, there's no flights right now. What do you do with all your air stewardesses? You're of course not going to do any advertising because there's no flights to be done. But what they're doing is some small social media campaign showing how their stewardesses and their what you call in-cabin crew, who are not doing anything right now because there's no flights, are helping out in hospitals, serving food, taking the vitals, or helping out in the city by controlling the crowds and keeping safe distancing. You see, so they're trying to show we are still here for the community, and that is very effective. Now, when I say marketing, I'm using a broader definition of marketing than just marketing. I'm including products and new product development and R&D. So again, just like with advertising, during recessions, the data indicates clearly companies behave in a pro-cyclical way. They reduce their R&D during contraction. And R&D, again, like marketing, is easier to cut than cutting human costs or cutting capital budgets, because those have penalties associated with them. Cutting real estate costs, those are penalties and long-term contracts. So marketing, because the money goes to third parties, is much easier to cut. R&D is easy to cut relatively because you say, in any case, we have so many R&D projects. Who knows which of these R&D projects will eventually be launched in the market? And even of the ones that are launched, we know that new products fail by about 80 to 90%. So it's an easy thing to cut back. And in any case, competitors are also cutting back new products, and we need to cut costs. So we know the data indicates very clearly over past several recessions that during recessions, you see fewer product launches. But by the way, the product launches that you do see on average tend to be of higher quality. Why? Because companies in any case are reluctant to launch new products. So the only new products they launch during recessions are the ones that they're more confident of, the ones that are higher quality. And this is true both for radical and for incremental innovations, incremental new products. So, but the data again shows that new products launched in recessions have a higher long-term survival rate and higher sales. And this is even after adjusting in the academic studies for the higher quality of products that are launched during recessions. Now, there are two limiting conditions over here. The first limiting condition is that this benefit of launching new products in recessions compared to expansionary time disappears for very severe recessions, because in those conditions, consumers are just not able to buy new products. And they also, you should not launch your new products too early in the recession when consumers are cutting back very furiously, but it's better to launch it in the second half of the recession, often a quarter or two before the end of the recession, or just immediately after the recession. Because when you launch at the end of a recession or just after a recession, because all your competitors have been cutting back on R&D, their new product shelves are bare. They have nothing to launch because they've cut R&D for the last so many quarters during the recession. So when you launch a product at the end of a recession or just after the recession ends, you're pretty much all alone in launching the new product because the competitors have a bare shelf. Then 6 months after the recession ends, we find that this benefit of launching during a recession disappears because by that time, all the competitors have launched up their, upped their R&D, and they all now have new products to launch furiously. Pricing behavior, the consumers are much more price sensitive during recessions. They don't like to cut consumption, especially of non-essential products. So what do? To remain in their budget during the recession? They hate to cut consumption, but what they do is they downtrade. They go to cheaper retailers and they go to cheaper brands and they go more to private labels. And especially true for larger share of wallet categories in your essentials, and they become more promotion prone. What does the data show? What is the managerial instinct? Because they're expecting lower sales, they do what is counterintuitive, absolutely. To maintain the revenues, they increase their prices. And also because they have liquidity concerns. And they hope that the unit, of course, what happens is when they increase the prices, because consumers are not willing to take price increases, the volume falls dramatically, then they have to do a lot more promotions to make up for this. So but in general, there are fewer promotions during this thing, but the losing firms tend to do a little bit. So to summarize what I've said, the managerial instinct during recessions for managers is cut the budget to bring it in line with expected lower sales, shift the budget from image advertising to more sales activation because you're desperate for sales. Advertising theme continue as before. For research and development, cut budget and shut down projects. For new product, delay until post-recession. For pricing, increase prices to compensate for lower volumes. And because you don't sell, then you do more frequent and deeper sales promotions. What you should be doing, according to the academic research and based on who performs better during recessions, those marketers that perform better during recession, they increase their share of voice with their advertising budget. They resist enhanced sales activation. They become more empathetic and ask the question, how can we help in their advertising? They continue to invest in the product pipeline. They launch as planned, especially past the midpoint of recession as the cycle seems to turn when consumers are becoming more optimistic. And in terms of pricing, they maintain prices and resist price increases, and they keep to a similar or lower frequency of price promotion. Okay, so that was my talk on how am I doing on time. I still have a few more minutes, couple more minutes. So you can see how, again, as an academic, I have to tell you something counterintuitive always. So I'm trying to tell you what managers do during recession and what the marketing research and the data from at least 50 academic studies says they should do. The people who win are the ones who follow countercyclical marketing. By the way, the reverse side of this countercyclical marketing is what we find is companies underspend during recession on marketing and they overspend in expansionary times over recession. Or in expansionary time. So they underspend on marketing during recessions and they overspend on marketing during expansionary time. And what we are asking with countercyclical marketing is that you smooth the peaks and valleys in your marketing expenditure over the business cycle. So you spend more than you would usually spend during the recession, and you spend less than what you usually would spend during expansionary, because in expansionary time, in any case, you can't fulfill the demand. The demand is going up in any case. Everybody is spending a lot. So you're basically, spending a lot of money into a lot of advertising clutter and product launches. Now, I'm just going to say one last thing before I move on. One of the interesting findings we find is that there are two kinds of players in recessions who do counter-cyclical marketing consistently. The first kind of players are private labels. These are the retailers' own brands. As the manufacturer brands are cutting costs and doing cyclical marketing and reinforcing the cyclical effects of a recession, private labels tend to do the opposite. So in most recessions, you see private label share goes up and manufacturer brand share goes down. The second kind of firms that we see who do really well in recessions relative to the others is family firms. Family firms compared to non-family firms overperform in recessions, but they don't overperform during expansionary time. And why do they overperform in recession times? Because family firms are more likely to engage in counter-cyclical marketing. And the reason they engage more in counter-cyclical marketing is because they take a multi-generational perspective. So they're not trying to maximize, the income for this quarter or the next quarter, but they're handing their company over to the future generation. So they're more careful in cutting costs. Secondly, often the family name is also the brand name. So they're more reluctant to cut costs and branding. And generally, this is especially true for the conservative family companies. These would be companies like the RD Godreges in India, or the Scandinavian and German family firms. They tend to have a lot more slack resources compared to non-family firms. They take less debt, so they have more financial resources in recessions to spend on advertising, marketing, keep up the new product launches, continue to spend on R&D. The multi-generational perspective, the family as the brand name, and the slack resources together makes them more likely to maintain advertising and new product introduction. And so you do find out performance of them. As the Aditya Birla, Prabhas Kumar Mangalam Birla is famously known for saying, we want to be the last man standing and the first man forward when we get out of this. So that is my, I think my talk is now exactly on time. I have 1 minute, and I welcome all of the audience to join me to follow me on LinkedIn or Twitter or Instagram, whatever you wish. And I hope that this was valuable for you and you got at least a couple of ideas. I know it is very hard to do counter-cyclical marketing, and the new paper I'm writing is about what are the limits of counter-cyclical marketing and how do you do it. Clearly, you will need a top management mandate to be able to do this. Thank you very much. Sorry, Rama, you are on mute, so we can't hear you. If you were talking, you're not talking, right? Okay, so who's supposed to take over now? Shall I give it back to you, Rama, as a way to get out of it?
I'm a corporate type. I'll do anything I'm told to do.
Indrani, it's your job now.
Yes, please. Yes. So I think this was fantastic. Two very different perspectives from absolutely light focus from two different angles. I think again there is somebody who has unmuted the mic from where a lot of noise and echo is coming. Request everyone to please mute their mics, please. Okay, so thank you, Professor Nirmali Kumar, Ms. Rama Bijapurkar. Thank you for the excellent and the way you have thrown new light on this whole subject, challenging subject of marketing in the new normal. I wouldn't really go into the details of it, but I would like to really, on behalf of the CII and on behalf of my chairman, thank you very much for giving us this time and sharing your very valuable insights, on consumer behavior, and also how do you kind of change your marketing strategy in cyclical and in cyclical phases. I think this virtual summit has I want to share that this multifaceted virtual summit is a part of the center's thrust on digital and physical interventions, both in open classrooms and in-house formats. So we look forward to more such. These kind of classrooms have witnessed the enthusiastic participation of hundreds of senior executives representing leading Indian companies. I'm pleased to share actually that over the course of the last few years, the center has been organizing several long duration technology enabled immersive training programs. Actually, we had started much before COVID struck. And so we were kind of prepared and knew how to transform our offerings and services digitally. And this is one of the largest conference that we are doing on a digital platform. So, so I'd like to, I don't have much to say other than thanking both of you once again. And we hope that all participants will be, there throughout. There are a phenomenal lineup of sessions and speakers. There are actually multiple sessions of during a particular slot. So please choose your slot carefully and participate. And they are going to be very interactive. And I can't but not thank the partners who made it possible, all our partners who made it possible. Kuchina, Canara Bank, eMudra, GAIL, HDFC, Karnataka Bank, LIC Housing Finance Limited, Bharat Petroleum, and PNB MetLife. Last but not the least, I'd like to thank all our very dear participants from across us here today. You come in very large numbers. Your presence has always been the key motivator for organizing this Marketing Leadership Summit, and your support has been instrumental in making this initiative a flagship of the Center of Excellence for Leadership. And I look forward to meeting you in the future editions as well as and over the next day, today and tomorrow. My last but not the least, again, my most sincere thanks to Mr. Harsh Neotia, our chairman, for his continuous encouragement in whatever we do, continuous encouragement, guidance, and showing directions which way to go and on. I would like to say, with the permission of Mr. Neotia, that Mr. Professor Nirmali Kumar and Ms. Vijapurkar, maybe we could look at some more future programs with you, which are deep dive, where we really dig deep into your huge experience and knowledge that you have. So thank you once again. And with this, we would like to now, this opening and inaugural session, move on to the other sessions.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Always a pleasure to see you, Harsh and Rama.
Thank you.
Likewise, I was hoping to get a look at the art in the distance, but I'll take a screenshot and look at it later.
Can you
It's
show?
an open collection. If you're ever in London, you're most welcome.
Okay.
But we can
If you're in London, you're
absolutely
welcome to visit because it's an open collection.
Oh, okay, lovely, superb. Thank you. All right, Neotia ji, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great job.
I must tell you that Mr. Neotia himself is a phenomenal connoisseur of arts. And for that, you have to come to Calcutta to see.
I can see behind him as well.
Yeah, but that is nothing. What is absolutely phenomenal. And he also is a phenomenal composer of several kind of, musical kind of, what would I say? I don't know. They on themes and gets people together and, creates music, creates a thought out of it. Maybe I will share some links with both of you.
Two outstanding invitations is truly paisa vasool.
Yes.
Thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much.
Look forward to having you both soon in Calcutta. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Neotia. এবার কি করবো? নেক্সট সেশন কোথায়? কেন তোমাদের এই হাইওয়ে গিয়ে আমি ক্যানট জয়েন? শিগগিরই পাঠিয়ে দাও, শিগগিরই পাঠাও। নেক্সট সেশনটা কটায় শুরু হবে? আমার একটা পাঠাবার আছে প্রিন্সকে। হ্যাঁ করো, তুমি তাড়াতাড়ি আমাকে দিয়ে দাও যাতে পার। I would suggest you send it to Mr. Puri. Let him moderate the thing. I will only introduce him. That's it. And the other speakers, other ke chatte achen, Mr. Samit Sarpati and others,